Hi, everybody. Welcome to Both Sides of the Story. I'm your host, Alan Janae from CBS 4. Thanks for joining us. Our special high school debate fall tournament continues. Welcome to the semifinal rounds. On tonight's show, students from Cherry Creek High School and Denver East High square off for a spot in this season's championship. Both of the students tonight have prepared a pro and con case for the debate, and they won't know which side they're on until we have a coin flip right here in our studio. Let's meet our semifinalists. First up, Shrusty Manikondan. Shrusty is a senior at Cherry Creek High School and actively competes in extemporaneous speaking. Outside of debate, Shrusty is co-president of Cherry Creek's National Honor Society and is very passionate about tutoring children in her community. She has also learned classical dance for 11 years. Next up tonight, Jess Miller. Jess Miller is a senior at East High. She is co-captain of the East High debate team and qualified for the National Tournament of Champions debate competition last year. Jess was a member of the state champion constitutional law team, which placed 6th in the national competition in May of 2018. In her free time, she enjoys horseback riding as well. Also joining us is our special panel of experts who will offer their analysis of our debate. They are Dominic Dezzutti, host of Colorado Decides, the election debate series produced in conjunction with CBS 4. And next to him is Eric Sonderman, political analyst, seen right here on Colorado Inside Out on Friday nights. So it's time to set our ground rules. Let's do it. Each side will present their case. They'll ask each other questions and have a chance to offer rebuttals. When it's finished, we'll go to our illustrious panel for their own questions and find out whom they felt offered the best arguments. So let's get started. Tonight, the issue up for debate is, should cities in Colorado provide safe injection sites to address the heroin overdose crisis? Big topic. Let's have our coin flip and get ourselves underway. Shrusty, I'm going to ask you, call it heads or tails,
heads.
And we have heads, so go for it. What would you like?
I'll take the affirmative.
You'll take the pro side, the affirmative. You will go first as the proponent in this round. The floor is now yours for 3 minutes. Go ahead.
I stand in firm affirmation that cities in Colorado should provide safe injection sites to address the heroin overdose crisis. Last year, there were 959 reported deaths in Colorado due to drug overdose, and 228 of these were attributed to heroin. Heroin deaths in our state have risen sharply over the past few years, and these numbers are expected to rise. Because of the severity of this issue, it's essential for Colorado to reduce the deadly impact of the heroin crisis by providing safe injection sites. The first reason why Colorado should implement a plan to install safe injection locations is because it will save the lives of addicts. Today, hundreds of supervised consumption facilities exist in Canada, Europe, and Australia. In Vancouver, Canada, evidence shows that since the opening of the first heroin injection site, life-threatening overdoses within half a kilometer of the location declined by as much as 1/3, with not even a single death. Similarly, in Germany, 45% of addicts achieved total recovery and abstinence following the usage of supervised injection locations. These facilities are clearly making a difference in saving and helping the lives of heroin addicts. Therefore, it would be a loss for Colorado not to implement these programs. The second reason why Colorado must provide safe injection sites is because they improve public health for all citizens. The renowned Canadian newspaper, the Globe and Mail, reports that since the development of Vancouver's safe injection site, there has been a decline in dangerous behavior, such as sharing needles, and a related decrease in HIV infections. The Vancouver Police Department even endorsed the facility, stating that they have found significantly fewer discarded needles in neighboring streets. Colorado cities could benefit from a similar reduction in dangerous behavior and disease if they provide safe injection facilities. In addition to the health benefits, the economic benefits must also be considered. The National Council for Behavioral Health reports that if safe injection sites existed in San Francisco, 85% of the city's heroin and other drug users would use these, thereby saving the city $3.5 million in medical costs. Similarly, Thomas Jefferson University revealed that Philadelphia could save over $650,000 from reduced ambulance, ER, and hospitalization expenditures. cities around Colorado spend millions of dollars on medical costs related to drug overdose. The implementation of safe injection sites would clearly reduce a large portion of these costs. Across the board, evidence points to one conclusion, which is that Colorado's public health and economy would benefit tremendously from providing safe injection sites to address the heroin overdose crisis. And because of these reasons, I am proud to affirm the resolution.
Shrusty, thank you very much. Jess, you now have 2 minutes to address any questions to Shrusty, do some cross-examination here from the negative. Go ahead, Jess.
So why specifically do safe injection sites prevent the spread of HIV and hepatitis?
So a lot of the times when we look at the spread of HIV and hepatitis and other diseases as such, a lot of these are caused because of unsafe injections of drugs such as heroin. So when people are doing this on streets with unsafe and unsterilized needles and things as such, they are acquiring these diseases and they're spreading it to others with interactions.
So basically what we need is ways for people to get sterile needles, correct? That's how we stop the spread of HIV and hepatitis C?
Sterile needles as well as a safe location to do so, because when we look at a lot of practices for people who were completely addicted to a lot of these illegal substances, not only do they have unsafe needles, but a lot of their overall, the ways they're doing it, the locations and things as such are harmful.
Okay. And so what should we focus on in this debate? Should it be who can save the most lives, or should it be economics? What do you think is the most important?
So I think when we're considering the solution for a problem like the opioid epidemic, we can't just simply focus on one issue. Obviously, the main factor in today's debate should be who can promote public health the most, but also there are a lot of other factors like economics, and we can't put any issue at compromise.
Okay, and so then on your first point, you talk about other countries. But is it true that other countries have different healthcare systems and may have different access to treatment or universal healthcare?
Yes, that's true, but when we're looking at this issue, it's simply of the opioid epidemic. It's not directly related to healthcare because we're just advocating for safe facilities for people to take these drugs and heroin and things as such. So we're not really comparing healthcare in any way. We're just looking at the overall practice of drug usage.
Sure, but if in other countries it's easier to get treatment, I would believe that they may have better rates of recovery. In the United States and Colorado in specific, it's very hard to get treatment, and so even if these people go and use the safe injection sites, they're not necessarily going to recover because they can't get treatment. So we're not necessarily going to see the same results that there were in Canada and Germany, which have better treatment options and better health care.
So the reason we don't have enough accessibility for people who are current addicts is because we don't have enough locations and facilities and treatments and education programs as such. But by passing this resolution, we are fixing that problem, and we're bringing ourselves to a comparable advantage to countries like Canada and continents like Europe, where they have these facilities for people to use. So we would be saving lives.
All right, I'm going to have to cut off the questions right there, Jess. But Jess, you now have 3 minutes to make your case. The question: should cities in Colorado provide safe injection sites to address the heroin overdose crisis? You have the negative. The floor is yours for 3 minutes. Go ahead.
This debate is fundamentally about what Colorado should do to reduce the harmful effects of heroin overdose. Our goal should be to implement legal and well-studied solutions to reduce the incidence of overdose death. Safe injection sites are the wrong solution to Colorado's heroin overdose crisis. First, safe injection sites have not been proven to work. Vancouver's site, which Colorado's would be modeled after, has been a disaster. According to Joshua Freed, a local council member, within 5-block radius, there is 5,000 users that live in the area, and since they opened the site, overdoses from heroin have increased by 750% in the area. Additionally, according to a meta-analysis studied by the International Journal of Drug Policy, an examination of the 8 best studies to date on safe injection sites showed that they were found to have no effect on overdose mortality and that they had a significant unfavorable result in relation to problematic heroin use. Keith Humphreys, a Stanford University addiction researcher, explains nobody should look at the literature regarding safe injection sites and make confident conclusions. Second, a second major disadvantage to establishing safe injection sites is that the centers would likely be closed down immediately by the federal government. In an interview with NPR, U.S. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein said that the safe injection sites violate the federal law, and another top justice official stated, quote, "If you open one, prepare for swift and aggressive legal action." Just this past week, California Governor Jerry Brown vetoed a bill that would have allowed supervised drug injection sites in the state, explaining although this bill creates immunity under state law, it can't create such immunity under federal law, and it would be irresponsible to expose local officials and healthcare professionals to potential federal criminal charges. Clearly, Colorado would be wasting time, energy, and resources on opening an injection site that is going to be shut down. Fortunately, there is a better solution. We should train bystanders to administer naloxone, a medication that rapidly reduces opioid overdoses. Equipped with education and training, naloxone can be administered by a passerby, an acquaintance, or a first responder. Administration of naloxone by community members is legal in the status quo. Safe injection sites are not. The 911 Good Samaritan law gives legal protection to non-medical individuals who provide naloxone and is available without a prescription at retail pharmacies. The Harm Reduction Center explains that taking home naloxone programs have resulted in 26,000 drug overdose reversals since 2010. We need to be spending our limited resources and time on training and distribution of naloxone, which is preferable to investing in safe injection sites which have demonstrated efficacy, which have not demonstrated efficacy, and are likely to be shut down by the federal government upon opening. Thank you.
Jess Miller, thank you very much from East High School. Now Shrewsbury Manacondon of Cherry Creek High School. You have 2 minutes for questions of Jess. Your time begins now.
So, Jess, you bring up a lot of great points, and I think your solution's interesting. Could you quickly just go over how this would work in terms of training public bystanders to use naloxone properly?
So it's actually already happening right now. Especially friends and family members of people who use heroin have been going and getting these take-home naloxone kits, or have been going to retail centers. You can actually get them almost over the counter at pharmacies now at 400 centers in Colorado, and they've been going and getting these naloxones, and then they can address it if they see somebody on the street suffering from signs of an overdose, or if they have a close family member or a loved one, they can also address it by administering this naloxone, which can completely reverse the overdose.
So what incentive do these bystanders have to go to these facilities, buy naloxone, and actually use it if they see unsafe behavior going on?
Sure, so there's a couple reasons. First of all, a lot of people do it because they have friends and families affected by this. As you bring up in your own speech, it's an epidemic in Colorado, and it's something that people really care about. So I believe that would be one really big reason, is that people are really worried about this. But second of all, we can also administer it to first responders who are called to the site and then would be able to use it, and so they are going to be there anyway.
Okay. So what would you say the goal of this debate is? Wouldn't it be to reduce the amount of addiction and addicts in Colorado?
I would say, in general, it would be great if we could solve the heroin crisis. But unfortunately, I don't think that's something that one policy is necessarily going to be able to do. I think what we should be focusing on is keeping people alive and keeping people from dying of overdoses on the streets like are happening right now. And so I would argue that by increasing access to naloxone, we can decrease the amount of overdoses and deaths.
So you also talk about how the federal government will likely oppose this. And though that is true based on the current administration, isn't it the responsibility for states like Colorado to take action and go to court, even if it means going to court, as long as the action is going to benefit public health?
So I think there's two major responses to this. First of all, I don't think that Colorado will do that. I don't think they're going to take it to court because we can look at California just gave up. And so I don't necessarily think that there's a probability that we're actually going to do this. But second of all, we should be focusing on resources on programs that actually work, and this safe injection sites simply have not been proven to.
All right, we'll have to cut off those questions right there. On both sides of the story tonight, top high school debaters on the question of safe injection sites for heroin in Colorado. Shrewsbury, you now have 2 minutes for a rebuttal. Go ahead.
So I would first like to go down a lot of the arguments that my opponent brings up. And a lot of these arguments are strong, but a lot of my evidence clearly opposes these. So starting with my opponent's first point, she talks about how Vancouver's safe injection site did not work. But my evidence shows that within just 1 year of the implementation, within a half-mile radius, 1/3 of the number of unsafe injections and addiction decreased by that much. Moreover, my example shows Germany as well, which my opponent didn't really touch on in questioning, but in Germany, 45% of addicts achieved total recovery by using safe injection sites. Now, the point of today's debate is to address the heroin overdose crisis. And so by installing these safe injection sites, we can see that so many people are achieving full recovery, meaning that they are completely getting away from this addiction. So this is something we have to prioritize. Also, looking at my opponent's second point, stating that the federal government is likely to oppose this sanction, yes, that is true. The current Trump administration and the Justice Department is not in favor of promoting safe injection sites. But the fact is that states do have some leverage. For example, when we go back a few years in terms of marijuana legalization, the federal government does not actually allow it. But the fact is that a lot of states fought for this at a state level, and eventually the federal government did turn a blind eye to it and allowed them for this legalization. So this is something that could proceed forward, especially seeing that this is a public health crisis. Finally, looking at my opponent's solution of providing naloxone and allowing bystanders to get this training, this is not a practical solution for a few reasons. First, my opponent's solution suggests that we have to first educate a lot of these bystanders on how to properly use naloxone. Second, we would have to have an incentive for a lot of these people to go to facilities and buy naloxone to treat people that they see who are using heroin. And finally, it really isn't a safe way to trust a lot of bystanders to take safe and diligent actions when they see unsafe behavior in regards to drug use going on in neighboring streets. And so for a lot of these reasons, we can see why the pro side does gain an advantage as opposed to the neg side.
Shusti with the positive side. Thank you very much. And now, Jess Miller, you have 3 minutes for your response and close. Go ahead.
Okay, so first onto my opponent's case, she brings up these studies about heroin overdose, but you're going to realize that you're going to prefer the evidence that I bring up in case because the latest review of the research is more rigorous than those done before it, and it detected little to no effect from supervised consumption sites in the best studies that the researchers could find. It was a meta-analysis, meaning it picked out the best studies, not ones that may have cherry-picked or manipulated their data. And by weeding out the weaker studies, meaning in scientific terms those that didn't provide a fully replicable data, and those that didn't have a comparison group, they really didn't see a big correlation. And so in the best studies, we're really not seeing this correlation that my opponent tries to bring up. But then moving on to the fact that she talks about we're going to be saving lives. She brings up other countries, but what you're going to have to realize is that other countries have different healthcare and different access to treatment, which is actually going to be critical because when we see that they have recovery in other countries, it's because people can go into treatment. Once they've decided they want to quit heroin use, they can go into treatment and will stop using. That's why we have recovery. However, we simply don't have access to treatment in America. 67,000 Coloradans who say they need treatment for substance abuse aren't receiving it. And more than half of the participants who said that they would use a safe injection site have emphasized waiting time as a significant barrier to treatment. Insofar as people going to safe injection sites can't even get the treatment they need to get better, we're actually not seeing the impacts that she tries to tell you will happening. But then moving on, she says we can improve public health. But what you're going to realize is that we're already improving public health through needle exchange. What's going on in the status quo is that we have programs where people can exchange their used needles for clean needles. And that's really good because people then aren't reusing new needles because they're getting free clean needles, and they're also not dumping them because they have to exchange them in order to get a new needle. So actually this spread of HIV is not uniquely solved by safe injection sites. They're actually going to be solved by these needle exchange programs, which are in place with or without safe injection centers. Then finally, onto her point of economy, you're going to realize it doesn't even matter because the federal government is going to shut these down. It's already happened in California. She brings up this evidence of marijuana, but that was under the Obama administration. This is a whole new administration who has been much more likely to act upon things when they say that they're going to clamp down on states. Also, do we really want to waste our time and limited political capital on arguing for safe injection sites in front of the federal government when we're not even sure that they work and we're fighting the government on other fronts such as on immigration? I would say that we should be saving our political capital for those things and not a safe injection site that may or may not work. So back onto my own solution. What you're going to realize is she brings up that they're not likely these community naloxone programs. What you're going to realize is they're already happening in the status quo. People realize that this is a crisis, which she brings up, and they want to take action against that. Oftentimes, these kits are really cheap. It's something like $20 to save a life. So people are going and doing this, especially because so much of our population loved ones have been affected by this. So because of that, we We should increase these programs, which can save thousands, 26,000 lives since 2010. Therefore, I can only see that we should not do safe injection sites. Thank you.
Jess Miller of East High School, thank you very much. Finally, Shrusty Manacadden from Cherry Creek High School, you have 1 minute for close.
So looking over a lot of my opponent's responses to my previous speech, we can see that my opponent first talks about a meta-study saying that Vancouver's safe injection sites were a disaster. But not only do I provide you evidence with this, but we can see that even if we want to disregard Vancouver's site, the sites that I talk about in Germany, Europe, and Australia have all been successful. In fact, in Germany, 45% of people who use these sites went into full recovery. My opponent really doesn't address this. Also, my opponent talks about how we can't compare the US with other countries, but we can see that in the evidence I show, Thomas Jefferson University and the National Council for Behavioral Health did studies on a potential safe injection site that could open up in San Francisco and Philadelphia. And both of these results showed that not only would there be economic benefits, but people would be saved in terms of their addictions and unsafe behaviors. Also, we can see that looking at my third point and her responses, my opponent says that the economics of this argument don't matter because the federal government is likely going to shut it down. Yes, it's true that the federal government is not in support of Colorado's actions in this regard, but Colorado could easily combine with California, Pennsylvania, and Vermont and other states to take a joint effort to push for this extremely important scenario. The ultimate goal of today is to improve public health, and the affirmative is the side that does it.
Shrusty, Jess, thank you very much for that great spirited debate. Let's go right to our panel of experts to get their thoughts on what they saw. Dominic, take it away.
Alan, thank you very much. Folks, you both did a fantastic job. This is a thrilling debate. It was fun to be a part of it. It's great to be on the judging panel for this. Shrusty, we're going to begin with you. We're going to each ask a question from your case, and then we'll do the same thing for you, Jess. Eric, why don't you ask our first question?
Great. First, just to echo that, sign of good debaters is when each one of you is talking, I'm agreeing with you. Then the other one talks, and I nod my head yes to them. So incredibly well done. Let me start with Shrusty. One piece of your argument that I really didn't hear discussed is almost the moral piece of it, or this what I'll call the societal standard. Do safe injection sites in your mind serve in some way to promote heroin and other opioid usage? And does society have a legitimate interest in saying, no, we are not going to endorse that?
So that is a very important point, and a lot of sides in this debate in Colorado and nationwide have brought up that idea. But we have to see that on the surface level, though it may seem that safe injection sites are promoting heroin usage, when we look deeper, these safe injection sites are in place in order to decrease addiction, and the numbers agree with that. In fact, when a lot of these safe injection sites have been put in place, the people who are running these are referring a lot of these patients to in-treatment facilities and education programs. And because of that, many people who are going to safe injection sites are actually completely recovering and are going into a state of abstinence from using heroin. So yes, on the surface level, it may seem that we are promoting heroin usage, but what we're doing is giving these addicts a safe way to use heroin and ultimately get off of their addiction. So morally, this is actually doing the right thing for public health.
Shrusty, let me follow up with that. Colorado is basically fairly a libertarian state, a live and let live kind of place. Is solving this problem the government's job in Colorado?
Yes, I absolutely do think it's the government's job. When we look at the opioid epidemic, it's currently at its worst. And as I stated, nearly 959 people died in Colorado just last year. And seeing that such a high volume of people are losing their lives due to a problem like the opioid epidemic, it's absolutely the government's involvement and responsibility to take a stance on this issue and do as much as they can to reduce the number of lives that are lost, because the opioid epidemic is a problem that has been going on for decades.
Jess, it's your turn. Eric, your first question for Jess.
I'm going to go back, Jess, to the states' rights issue that you discussed in some detail. Isn't it, whether we want to pick this fight or not with the Trump administration, isn't it almost more important that states under this administration assert their sovereignty and their right to go their own path? And what path Colorado picks doesn't have to be what path Missouri or Maryland picks, but we can pick our own separate direction. Your comments?
I absolutely agree that under the current administration, government should be taking actions that they feel are important to oppose harmful decisions made by the Trump administration. However, I think we have to pick and choose our battles. We do have a limited amount of political capital, and do we want to spend that on, saving immigrants because we are a state with immigrant bubble, or do we want to spend that political capital advocating for safe injection sites, which may or may not work? The research isn't clear. So while yes, I do agree that we do need to be standing up to the federal government, I think we need to pick and choose when it's important to do so.
Jess, my question is about one of the bigger parts of your argument about naloxone. If that is a solution and it's already available, why are we still in an overdose crisis in Colorado?
So I think one of the problems with overdose in general is that we don't have enough resources to fight it. It's not readily available enough. There's not enough training. So I would say that instead of spending resources on safe injection sites, we should be converting those resources to training, which we simply don't have enough of, and getting more naloxone out there. It's a great program, but it simply needs more resources, and that's why it hasn't been as effective in the past.
Alan, give us as much time as you can. We're going to need as much as possible.
We're trying to bar the doors to keep the college recruiters out. All right, we're going to give the panel a moment to consider whom they felt won this debate, and that'll give you a little moment here to tell you about what's happening here. This is the first semifinal round. Tune in next week when students from George Washington High and Mountain Vista High School vie for the other spot in the championship round. So that's probably not enough time to settle this, guys, but let's hear it. What do you have?
Alan, we really could have used the stretch signal there. It's a little bit longer. You've probably heard me say this on different debates, but this is exactly what we thought of when we invented this series, is to see a debate like this. Both of you should be very proud. Eric and I could debate for the next hour of who we need to declare a winner, but it's still our job to do so. Shrusty, we decided to give the debate to you. You both offered very good argumentation, but in the end, your arguments held the day. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Absolutely incredible. Shrusty Manikan and Jess Miller, thank you very much. You both gave our viewers a wonderful debate tonight. You both ought to be very proud of your arguments. Go on to compete in the championship round on the 2nd of November. So you did a great job. We're going to see you next week. Also, Jess, in the third place match. So all of that yet to come here on both sides. So that's all the time we have for our program tonight. I want to thank our excellent students for accepting our challenge and participating in our debate, doing all that work to prepare. I want to thank our esteemed panel for sharing their thoughts, and finally, thank you for tuning in. It's the support of viewers like you and our sponsors that helps make this show a reality. As I mentioned, this is just the first semifinal round of our big final tournament, and be sure and tune in next Friday night at 7:30 for our next semifinal match. You can catch all of our great both sides debates on cpt12.org. Be sure and check them out. You can catch me every morning on CBS 4 for all the latest news and information about this year's election and the issues. For everybody here at Colorado Public Television, I'm Alan Janae. Thanks for watching, and that is Both Sides of the Story.